Hi, good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a very, very important discussion around law, around advocacy, around discussions at European level. We have just a very, very short period here, and we have 4 extraordinary speakers. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Chiara Gallese, Sarah Andrew, Nungu, and of course, Dr. Karine Kunz. Just a small introduction to our extraordinary and interesting speakers. Dr. Chiara Gallese, she's a researcher at the Tilburg Institute for Law, Technology and Society and an adjunct professor at Kofasara University. Chiara's research focuses on AI fairness and data law, and she's an academic expert in the EU codes of practice and working groups. Chiara will, of course, she will start this discussion today, and she will be followed by Dr. Karine Kunz. She's the executive director at the Center for AI and Digital Humanism, DigiHumanism. It's basically a think and do tank, which aims to ensure humanistic governance of AI. She's been providing expert advice in many areas, notably in AI governance to the UN, the Global Digital Compact, UNESCO. She's been working on the guidelines for the use of AI systems in courts and tribunals. Karine has also been working with OECD, the Organization of American States, Council of Europe, Framework Convention on AI, and of course she's been working as an expert member within the European Union on the GPAI Code of Practice and of the Transparency Code of Practice drafting working groups. Like Sarah Andrew, she will be our third speaker. She leads Avas's global campaigning, and Sarah has been working on the very important area of the threats to human rights from technology. Sarah's a lawyer and an activist and has contributed to recent EU tech legislation from the Digital Services Act, the DSA, to the EU AI Act and the Code of Practice for General Purpose AI Providers. Just a bit of background on Sarah. Globally, she's worked on the UN Global Digital Compact and has co-drafted the UN Human Rights Office points for state regulation of AI. And Sarah has been recently advising on the integration of practical human rights protections into international AI product standards. Nonga is from Kenya. He is our online safety trainer and advocate. He's a student nurse at the Kenya Medical Training College, and he's CEO of African Enterprises Campaign Tent Sellers. So we're going to welcome everybody. Thank you very, very much for agreeing to participate in this discussion. The focus is to have a fireside discussion, a relaxed discussion, but also to move at quite a very interesting pace because there is a lot of information to be covered. Chiara, can I start with you? As I said, Chiara has been working on platform harm and profiling and automated decision making. What do you think are the factors that enable platform harm?
Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you also, Angeline, for inviting me here. I'm very happy. So I am very concerned about this topic, not only because I am a researcher and I can see, in my everyday life how platform enable harm, but also because I am a mother. So this is particularly important to me. What we have seen with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, in the early days of Facebook, and what is still continuing today, is that this big platform use users' data, and they collect such amount of information from us, and they are able to create these huge profiles of us that put us into boxes. And on the basis of this data, they are able to target us with advertising, with deciding what we are exposed to. They also can share our data with third parties. So all these factors together enable platform harm. We are not in charge. Do not have control over how our data is used, and we are kind of passive subject to the decisions of these algorithms, and of course the business decisions of the company. Because, for example, just a quick example, I know we don't have so much time. A quick example is that, for example, it turned out that Meta, Facebook at that time, knew that some advertisement in their platform were fake or were scams, and because they brought so much profit to them, they did not stop them. So vulnerable people, people with addictions, children, old, elderly people, are constantly exposed to these scams, and they are more um, vulnerable. They cannot really defend themselves properly, and
Yeah,
still this
absolutely.
platform
Mm.
profit over that.
Chiara, do you think that the current legal framework is sufficient to address platform harm?
Honestly, I don't think it is sufficient for many reasons. In Europe, we are kind of lucky, I would say, because we have a lot of legislations. We have the AI Act, we have the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, the Data Act. We have a huge amount of digital laws that protect us to some extent, but still the real issues are not addressed. Even through the code of practices that me and Angelina contribute to, and also Karina contribute to, we are of course trying to change the situation, but it's not easy. Um, all the algorithmic decision making is not properly regulated. There is still a huge amount of liberty or freedom from the platforms to use our data. And because one of the many issues is that because the use of data is global, it's not related only to Europe. Once the data is outside Europe, there is no control anymore. And for example, in the US, for data subject for citizens, it's very expensive to seek redress in a court. So basically, there is very little protection outside Europe. So I don't think we are there yet. We have a long way to go.
So what do you think we should do, Chiara? I mean, we are being faced with what in one word can be summarized as a crisis. It's a global crisis. What do you think that we as citizens can do to actually contrast what's been happening currently?
So I think one of the most important solution, although it's not really a solution, but it's a start, is to lobby ourselves. So we see all these companies going to speak with the legislator. They also made dedicated workshops for legislators and vice versa, of course. They really do a very huge amount of lobbying in all the settings that count. And we, as individual, we feel that we are hopeless against these giants, but this is not really true. If we united, if we go into civil rights organizations, civil liberties organizations, if we advocate to do awareness, we can do something. Of course, we as individuals, we can also, for example, stop using big platforms, but we know that this is not really feasible because all businesses go through these visibility machines. It's really not feasible to go offline completely. But if we start doing the same as big tech do, eventually we will have an impact to protect our rights and data.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking from a personal perspective, when I was working, I project managed the Sessagram project in Brussels for 2 years. One of our biggest problems was the privacy lobby. It was very, very difficult for us as a civil rights organization to have a voice against such a powerful platform. The privacy lobby is huge. What should we do? What would you advise going forward on trying to combat such a powerful privacy lobby?
Well, I think lobbying ourselves through politicians, for example, organizing, fundraising, and attend all the important conferences, events, policy making initiatives, giving our opinion when the European Union asks for a lot of consultations. We should, mass bombing this platform with our opinions.
Absolutely.
Um, so be there,
Do you,
be present.
Yeah, completely, and that was something that we were very much instrumental in creating. We created a presence within the Brussels bubble because the Brussels bubble can be very much dominated by the privacy lobby, but it's a constant barrage and a reminder to the privacy lobby that we do as citizens or as society that we do have a voice. Is there anything else you would like to add, Chiara?
So I really would like to tell citizens, regular people, that even if they feel they don't have a voice or they are not powerful enough, actually they are. Please contact your organization in your territory, contact your representative, make your voice heard.
Mm.
It's not true that we are not powerful.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Cara. Karine, welcome. Just to build on Chiara's discussions, can you just talk us through why the AI Act and Code mattered so much? And what are the expectations from these two pieces of key regulation?
Yes, so maybe I will contextualize to answer your question because we often talk about an AI revolution. Is it really the case? We know that, for example, there's been an MIT report which states that actually AI, the technology as it's currently in its current state, is not that uh, has quite some shortcomings and is not that used by companies. But there's a whole narrative around it. That's why we talk all the time about it. And why it is a revolution, however, is because this technology has a significant impact on our daily lives and fundamental rights. So why the EU AI Act and its implementing codes are important is because they are more than mere safety regulation or product law liability type of regulation. They one of the fundamental principles of the AI Act is that AI systems and models should ensure a high level of fundamental rights protection, precisely because in the world, this is the first technology which has such an impact on our fundamental rights. So this is why I would say.
Um, if you, in terms of regulation, if you can include the way the code is likely to set a format for binding standards even better, can you
If
just
you
take
wish,
us through?
yes, I could. I would also like to give some tips and react to Chiara, follow up on what Chiara said, actually. So, why it's important? Sorry, can you repeat your question? I'm sorry, I moved to the
No,
next
no,
part.
actually, I will
Yes,
let you
sorry.
lead.
So
Why
just
don't you
to make
build
sure,
on, yeah,
sorry,
build on Chiara's tips, yeah.
yeah, no, but okay, I will do the two at the same time. So
Yeah.
basically, what happens is that we have the AI Act, but in certain fields, such as transparency obligation or general purpose AI models, we have codes implementing the Act. And the problem we have is that big tech have such a power that they have the possibility to rewrite the AI Act through the codes which are supposed to implement the legislation, not modify the legislation. So what they're doing is illegal. So we are participating in the drafting of the codes in order to ensure that the letter of the AI Act is respected, and of course that the fundamental rights protection which are enshrined in the AI Act are really embedded in the codes, because the codes are supposed to provide some set some obligations so that companies and providers and developers of AI models and systems knows how to implement the AI Act correctly in a fundamental rights compatible or compliant way. And to continue, the tips I would like to share then is that also, since we talk about regulation, we have the Act, we have the codes, and what we have actually is these codes are supposed to help ensure compliance with the Act. But after this, it's a bit complex, but these codes are supposed to be just a kind of transitions toward binding standards that companies will have to implement. We don't know when we will have these binding standards, but in the meantime, the code will be there to fill the gap. And that's why I think you have to make sure what you mean by regulation. What does that mean to regulate? So you have, I think that CSOs or academics who are participating or citizens who want to have a voice, they have to adopt a global perspective of what regulations is and have to decide where to intervene in the most impactful way. So they have to monitor what we could call the whole value chain, policy and lawmaking, implementation, for example, through the code or other measures, and enforcement. So my governance tips in this regard, very quickly, and actually it was done in consultation also with Sarah, who is online. So first, form a coalition of genuine support. Together, we are stronger without tough boundaries to maximize your impact. This coalition, you can build it up based on your shared values and objectives. So when we were negotiating the code of practice for general purpose AI models or the current transparency code, we have created a signal group in which all like-minded participants, CSOs and academics are exchanging views, are building their position together. We are really supporting each other. And it leads me to my second tip. You have to adopt an interdisciplinary perspective. Both have tech competences, contact competences, social impact, legal impact, etc. If you don't have it in-house, you have to build coalitions with others who have these competences. So build bridges with independent academics, for example, willing to help, or policymakers. Develop collective initiative. If I take the JPI Code of Practice example, we wrote a collective letter to the legislator, alerting them that the draft was not respecting the AI Act and was not taking into consideration the risk to fundamental rights, while it was supposed to be compulsory. And the legislator reacted, and itself, it's quite exceptional, issued a collective letter stating, watch out, the code should include obligatory risks to fundamental rights posed by AI models. It should be included. You can also include those your enemies claim as allies in joint or aligned communications. For example, small and medium business enterprises, but also the authors community, because they have copyright issues and we have common interests. Adapt to the officials you wish to convince. So you can have a point-blank fundamental rights discourse, but you can also have a competition perspective. You can say that to develop a fundamental rights perspective is to give a competitive edge to your country or to the EU, and it works beautifully. So you have to be aware of the position of the policymakers you are contacting in order to adapt your discourse. And that's what for example, we are currently doing with regard to the AI Omnibus, the legislations which aims to simplify the AI Act. You have also to apply tactical political pressure, meaning the when is as important as the how. For example, with the JPI Code of Practice, as I said, we issued a collective letter while we were drafting the code at the time where we thought it could have an impact and we could reverse the draft. We could still have an impact. And I have to say, we're going to do the same with the transparency code of practice we are currently negotiating. And final tips, because I want to keep in time, substantive tips. These were governance tips, some substantive tips. Law and facts. I'm not sure Sarah would agree on totally that, but I think from our perspective, we keep an objective approach. What does that mean? You have to back your claim with studies and facts. You can appeal to emotions, you can appeal to citizen experience, but you have to back your claims with studies and facts. For example, Chiara mentioned the EU Digital Services Act, and a lot of people said it has no use. is it so true? We found that companies had a risk management, social media had a risk management obligation, and we needed studies to prove that both were amplifying extremist contents. We had to do these studies covering millions of tweets or millions of X posts to show the impact, the concrete impacts these bots had on elections, and then contact the enforcement team at the EU Commission in order to bring them the facts and the studies they needed to take action. And so again, when you think about regulation, think about at which step, at which level you want to intervene. Of course, then for enforcement, you have to build political pressure so that indeed the rules will be enforced. They have to, but currently what we see is that some other interests are taking into consideration. And for legal arguments, it's very, very important, because I would say that, for example, in the negotiations of the two codes we are currently, the two implementing codes we have for the EU Act, what we say is that big techs are repeating over and over, do not go beyond the AI Act. And what we are stating over and over is that we are telling them, respect the AI Act. We are demonstrating them how they are not respecting the AI Act when they do not take into consideration fundamental rights. So you have to know your text, you have to analyze them to see strategically how you can have an impact. You have to have policy background and you have to have tech background, and you cannot have it all. That's why you have to build communities. You have to work together so that we could all have an impact. And at the same time, you can raise an awareness. And that's why I'm so happy to be participating in this conference today. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very, very much, Karine. I just in terms and just to finalize your important points, when you're speaking about political pressure and legal pressure, how would you define both forms of pressure? Equally important, but very different. How would you advise moving forward on the best way to apply political pressure and the best way to apply legal pressure?
There are informal and official and unofficial ways. You can contact policymakers privately and apply. This is more about concrete facts and legal arguments because they understand them. When you talk to people in the streets or citizens, you have to refer to things that matters to them. And this is where political pressure is very important, because policymakers are sensitive to concrete arguments. If we take the Grok scandal, okay, with all the CSAM issues, etc., we do have tools in Europe to address them, okay? But we have to raise awareness about the tools that we have and ask, for example, the Commission to enforce the tools that we have, to enforce the law. They have, I think we already have a lot of tools. They have to be used. And they have to be interpreted in an innovative way. That's what we need.
Absolutely. We have the tools, and that's a key sentence there. Okay, thank you very much, Karine. Sarah, I know we have had a concerted discussion on this, and we're going to build on Karine's points. Can you explain why the AI Act and Code mattered so much at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go over the ground that Karine's done, and I'm just going to give a little bit of context. So, I am an ex-regulator. I perhaps foolishly believe that regulation is a civilized way to deal with very powerful industries. I'm going to talk a little bit towards the end of our chat, maybe about why I'm not quite so sure that works, but yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Your litigation regulation interest, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, and but Avaz is it'd be worth knowing what Avaz is, because it's a little bit different. Avaz is a membership organization of people around the world. We have 69 million members. We have 22 million members in the EU, and we do what our members ask us to do. So we put proposals to them, but our members are and always have been really invested in the idea that there is a base level of human rights that everybody, all corporations, organizations should follow. So why was it important to Avaz as an organization that human rights were fully reflected? Well, because that's in the DNA of what we do. We polled our members and we got a petition going, which over 365,000 members in Europe signed. And in terms of Karin's talk about political pressure, that is a political pressure that you can bring. Join an organization, join a union, make your voice collective, because a collective voice plus the solutions that Karin was talking about is highly effective. You can have political pressure, but politicians won't move unless you give them a pathway. If you give them a pathway to follow, solutions, which you build into the piece of legislation you're working on, they will then follow you. And I also find it helps to make them cry as well. I remember making the rapporteur on the DSA cry when I talked about how disinformation had pulled the UK out of Europe and how my daughter now could no longer have the life that I envisaged for her. So getting their emotional buy-in is really, really helpful. And politicians do have emotions. So find out all you can about them. Are they parents? Do they have specific interests? That I would advise you to know them, because they're going to be your allies and they are going to be part of the coalition that Karin spoke so well to. So that's where I'm coming from, and that was why it was so important to us. And we are funded purely by our members. We don't take donations of more than $1,000 a year, which is great in terms of our independence, but it means we're really tight on the pennies. We don't spend time on things that aren't going to work. So we needed to find something as strong and as tested as human rights law to form the bedrock of how we were going to try and control the power of the global tech bros. Ethics don't cut it. One person's fairness is another person's unfairness. We wanted tried and tested, legally tested definitions of your right to privacy, your right to freedom of speech, and your right to be free from the kind of pressures that the platforms want to bring to you. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to add in one thing at this point, because I think it's really relevant. One of the things that we did ahead of the Digital Services Act, but more ahead of the AI Act work, is that we decided to go out and find real stories of people who were impacted by AI. Because at the time, politicians we're talking about 3 years ago now, it's all a robot, existential risk, it's far away, I don't understand it, and I'm not going to put my brain there. So we went and talked to them about people who'd been turned down for loans because their credit history was not a white credit history, people who'd been imprisoned because the forensics, the AI forensics that analysed the sound of a shot made it sound like it came from inside the car that they were driving rather than being shot into the car. We told them real stories of real people. And every year I do actually do a literature review to find more and more. So I would say that if you're thinking of campaigning or trying to effect change, couple with your coalition and your analysis, all those tactics that Karin was talking about, couple that with a real understanding of the on-the-ground impact that the thing you're campaigning on or arguing for change in legislation on is going to have. And I think that's really important because it also honours the position of the people that you are asking for the laws for. You don't want to become one of the politicians who's making law up here that actually doesn't work well for the people being impacted. So if you don't go and find out how they feel about it, how are you going to do that? So I would add that as the third element in the elements that Karin's put together there.
Change comes from the bottom, always, and we need to maintain that.
Yeah, and from reality. I think when you're dealing with AI, keeping grounded and keeping the people you are trying to influence grounded is really important. If I can share a story, and I won't name a name, the very first meeting I have had with the Commission, one of the people there, who was quite influential later on, said that AI wasn't really harmful, though, was it? It's not like pharmaceuticals or aviation. We pointed out that AI is now involved both in pharmaceuticals and aviation. So you quite often need to do some quite basic grounding of what the actual dangers are to then bring everyone with you on the complex, brilliant solutions that people like Karin are thinking up.
Yeah. Can you just take us through to the US, go to the US side, Sarah, and just tell us about the tech lobby's threat and how, your work in Avaz
Yeah, I
is.
mean, I'm gonna, because we don't have much time, I'm gonna try and address that as well, still bringing in tactics, because I think I'm gonna try and combine the two. So, as Chiara mentioned, we are subject to a scale of lobbying we've never seen before. It
Mhm.
was as if the Digital Services Act took American tech by surprise. And we got some amazing things done. I mean, we basically changed what was going to be a really basic piece of legislation that would take down illegal content, and we created an entire framework to assess and mitigate the harms of the big tech platforms. And they were caught, I hope people don't mind this phrase, they were caught with their pants down. So they were not going to get caught again. They were not going to get caught again. So I just want to, these figures, by the way, come from the Corporate Europe Observatory. I'm going to put their link in the chat at the end of
Chat,
when
yeah.
I speak. And I'll also put a link in, by the way, to some of the stories of real people that we have. So lobbying after 2021 increased by 55.6%. On average, a tech lobbyist has a meeting with a member of the commission every day. So that's across that. We cannot hope to meet that scale of ambition. But what we can do is shine a light on it. So both Avaz and the Corporate Europe Observatory, and I do advise you to go to their website, they do amazing work. We have started to use legal pressure. So we've started to use Freedom of Information Acts to reveal and embarrass about the number of meetings that are being held by members of the Commission and the industry, because these meetings matter. In January 2025, when Karine and I were deep in the Code of Practice for General Purpose AI, working party negotiations, open negotiations, fully transparent, fully public, but behind the scenes, Google raised concerns about the process and said that model developers, I'm quoting here, were heavily outweighed by other stakeholders. And what this got them were private sessions. Chiara mentioned this, private sessions where they took the draft that we were working on openly, ripped it to shreds, rewrote it, and then we'd see it in the next working group and go, but this is nothing like what we worked on. At one point, human rights were literally taken completely out of the code. They were just excited. No, this is too difficult. We don't know how to assess them. They're out. The ironic advantage of that is it was so glaring and so blatant that we managed to then, as Karine said, pull together a letter with the rapporteurs of the original bill, with members of the council, his nation states, going, you can't just trash the AI Act, you have to follow it. So to a certain extent, that wasn't great for them. But this is not open, it's not transparent. So what can we do in the light of that? Well, number one, we can put it in the light of day with Freedom of Information Acts. And secondly, we can demand information about what is being communicated privately. So I'm going to talk about a specific example. When Karine and I were in the working groups, we started to hear repeated and repeated from the chairs of the working groups, we can't do what you need us to do. We're really sorry, but we're being told legally we're not allowed to do that. So we started through Freedom of Information to demand sight of that legal opinion. And it was never provided. And we pushed and we pushed and we pushed. And then we threatened to go to the ombudsman, because there's an ombudsman in the EU.
Of course.
And at that point, that legal advice was no longer applied to the code. Whether the legal advice ever existed at all, we don't know. I have absolute faith in the chairs. I think that they were being told there were legal reasons they could not. But at what level that legal advice came from, we will never know. All we know is suddenly that objection disappeared. Human rights came back into the code. So I would say that using technical, legal transparency mechanisms are highly effective in a well-regulated set of bodies. Now, obviously, if you don't have effective access to rule of law in the country that you're working in, There are other tactics, and Avaz is starting to explore those, which are around litigation. I am not a litigator, but I have to admit, with the pressure that the US is now putting on Europe to roll back the very legislation that we passed. And can I say, by the way, and I know this is public, but astonishingly, the rapporteur, this is the person who literally writes the bill on the legislation that will look at the AI Act and decide if they're going to roll it back or not, is a former Meta policy spokesperson and analyst. They only joined Parliament 5 years ago, straight from Meta, and now they are writing the legislation that will control them. So we are now starting to look at litigation, and we're looking specifically at data litigation. Data litigation is a growth area for looking at human rights, trying to push human rights through. So we were part of a coalition. Sorry, I think I'm talking too long. I'm going to really try
No,
and
it's good.
power
It's
through
good.
this. So we were part of a coalition that looked at whether or not the data processing that Microsoft was doing on Palestinian citizens in Gaza was legal and compliant with GDPR. They had argued for around 18 months that there was nothing to look at, go away, it's all fine. And so we prepared a case in Ireland to go to court. And 2 days before that case was due to launch, they then withdrew from the data processing for the IDF and said that they now realized it was incompatible with their terms and services. So we didn't get to launch the case, but we did effect change. And we are now working on a similar tactic, and I'm not going to go into detail on the people who took over that processing. It's far more complex because the processing may or may not be happening in a GDPR regulated territory, but we're following that through. So that's trying to attack surveillance. And by the way, we are very pro the concept of privacy in human rights terms.
Absolutely.
We fight for that very hard.
Absolutely.
And then the other area we're looking at the moment is, and I think we're going to move on to that with Dungu, is Africa. Africa has really interesting constitutional rights because of the terrible things that British people did in Africa and other countries. A lot of the constitutions of African countries have a direct right to sue for a breach of human rights, which we don't have in Europe. We have to go and ask our states to intervene on our behalf. But in various countries, including in Kenya, you have a direct right to sue a company if it breaches your human rights. And we are supporting work to try and see if we will be able to sue for the distribution of content that would be regulated under the DSA if you were in Europe. So specifically non-consensual intimate imagery, also known as fake porn. It's a breach of your privacy. It's a breach of your right to dignity. And it is also potentially a breach to your right to freedom from torture. So we're starting to, I'm not going to say I don't believe in regulation, but I am extremely worried that in the current global political climate, it's going to be harder and harder to enforce it. So it may also be up to us campaigners to start to sue. And see if the judges
Okay, at the
can do
litigation process. I mean, the one and a small disadvantage of litigation can be actually the length of litigation. I know there's several cases, Google cases that are going through the European Court of Human Rights. Ireland has been involved in a lot of case law. It's the length of the litigation, but in terms of making impact, I think it's important to get into the court process. I think it's important.
Although interestingly, Microsoft move without us actually ever getting to court. Sometimes it's pressure, and and it's kind of like a game of chickens. You know, chicken, where you're sort of heading towards each other like this, and you see who swerves first. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a really, really interesting topic, and it's something I'm very, very interested in as well. But thank you very, very, very much, Sarah. But we will come back in the Q&A session in a few minutes.
Am I allowed to beg your indulgence as chair for 1 minute? Because I just want to tell this audience as well how much their support is needed. One of the US pressure tactics that we're now seeing is not just to threaten tariffs, but to start to pinpoint individual human rights defenders and put travel bans on them and in the case of Albanese, put sanctions on her. And this makes it harder for other organizations to be in coalition with them. There is a long list of organizations held by the State Department which are under threat of sanctions. The minute somebody threatens a US sanction, because we have a US entity, we're officially not allowed to go near them. We can't work with them anymore. So it's incredibly important that we maintain solidarity amongst each other. And I mean,
And
I think,
publicize what's happening.
yeah, and I think, Karine, you should go and have a
Inform.
look at the Senate Committee Justice report on EU censorship. Have you looked at it? Because I didn't realise until 2 days ago, somebody who's a colleague of mine said, "Oh, my name's in there," and I went, "Ha ha! Well, I escaped." And he went, "No, you didn't. Your name's in there too." And I went back, and my name is there. They've attempted to redact it, but they've left my full name in there. They left my full name. They redacted a bit of my Gmail address. So yeah, we're under their sights, and we're not going to stop, but we need solidarity with this, our whole community, our whole audience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sarah Nongam. I hope you've been waiting patiently for us. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Okay. Just to build on what Chiara, Sarah, and Karine have been saying, I mean, what techniques do you think do you use what have you used to reach and engage your target audience effectively online? And how do you balance the openness for engagement with security and privacy?
Okay, thank you for that. Mostly for targets for reaching and engaging our audiences. Mostly we were go to X. There's also a hashtag that is really trending there, of which Ruto must go. Meaning they are saying the president has to go, he's oppressing us. People also were using the content creators on various platforms like TikTok mostly, followed by Facebook. The content creators had to create content based on the matters that are oppressing the citizens. And mostly the content creators with more followers, those who are the people who are really who really help us and who really helped us during the 2024 finance bill protest. People were also using the intellectuals, people from different educational backgrounds, mostly the lawyers who are really summarizing and bringing in simpler terms the oppressive bills that the members of parliament were passing. So because when they are bringing those bills, they have jargons. So the common citizen cannot be able to fathom, cannot be able to understand well. So with those people with higher educational levels, e.g. the lawyers, if it's a bill based on health, that is now the doctors who are coming in. They were trying to summarize it to bring it in simple terms so as the person in the rural area can be able to get what the bill is saying. And also, people are really, of course, not everyone who is on social media. Those who are in the interior parts of Kenya still use the burner phones. And so, most of the Gen Zs have the smartphones. So whatever they were doing, were still mobilizing each other for the Gen Zs to explain to their parents, to explain to their grandparents, to explain to their relatives who don't have access to smartphones and to internet, what the bill is saying. And by that, we were really getting the wider reach. And that's why the protest, like the 2024 finance bill protest, it was really, people really came out. People really went to protest. And that was because everyone was involved. Everyone understood why they are going to protest. And by that, the protest was success, but people were aiming to breach the state house, which they were not, but they were able to breach the parliament. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, how would you explain the current situation now? I mean, what is the current situation in Kenya? What lessons have been learned by you to date, and where do we go from here?
Okay, the current situation, what I can first say is luckily we had a very good constitution which was implemented in 2010. And the constitution had elaborated all these things, including there's an act that there's, we call it Cybercrime and Misuse Act. Now the government is trying to regulate social media. Luckily now the constitution had stated well that in a way that they can't be able to regulate social media. They were trying to use that act to intimidate the activists by arresting them. But in the past 2 weeks, the court deemed that act unconstitutional in a way that they were using it because they were trying to suppress the freedom of speech. And now the government is really trying hard to ban some of these apps. Actually, there was a bill to ban TikTok in the last 1 month. Unfortunately for the members of parliament, maybe unfortunately to the president, unfortunately to us, the members of parliament rejected it because it was to also bring another, very big protest. And right now, the people have learned that mostly if we go with the constitutional ways, because also the judiciary is not really independent and it has been breached by the executive. So people are still trying to see whether they can plan another protest so as these people can feel the pressure. And as we say, as Sarah said, that the change has to come from bottom. Unfortunately for them, they thought the change should come from up, and they are filled with pride. So the situation is not that good because, like there's a bill they passed the day before yesterday, and of which people are still saying they need to go to the streets because it is against our constitution. So they amended the constitution, and so it is not people centered because they are planning to take more loans, or loans that are not having given Auditor General the oversight. So we still have some things to go. We still have some way to go with this regime. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just reading. Chiara has said that some of the activists were also killed, and unfortunately, becoming too influential, you are eliminated. You mentioned the word eliminated. What did you mean by that?
I mean
You said
that
some people, both of you, Chiara and Nyunga, whichever, either one of you can answer.
here, please, you can speak first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can speak fast, yeah.
Thank you. No, I was just saying that the power tries to maintain the power, right? To keep the power. So when they have an opponent that becomes too influential, they try to eliminate, right, the competition. They do everything they can to make them shut up. If they cannot buy them, then they kill them. We have seen that with whistleblowers. That happened a lot of time. We have seen with political activists, for example, in Congo. We have seen with environmental activists. So this is how big tech operates. Not only big tech, but also in general, corporation and powerful actors. So this is why I advocate for a widespread awareness that is made on a daily basis by a lot of people instead of having prominent figures that can be, replaced or killed. I think we need something that is really widespread. We need to recruit more people, make awareness, go to the schools, try to have more visibility as possible, but not one person, not not these influential figures, but a lot of us. This is what I think.
And do you want to build on that? So
For me, actually, when I said the government is still trying to intimidate us, during the 2024 finance bill protest, more than 60 people were killed on that day. It was June 23rd. More than 60 people were killed, and up to now, 200 people are still missing. Unfortunately, that happens when the law enforcement agencies are still captured by the executive. When the judiciary is still captured by the executive. Actually, last year there was a guy called, he was a teacher, but also an activist. He's called Albert Ojwang. He criticized the Inspector General of Police, and that guy actually died in a police cell. They killed him in a police cell and tried to cover up by interfering with the CCTV cameras. And so that's what they are trying to do, abducting people illegally that is, and killing them after they speak what the leaders don't want, after they try to enlighten people. And yeah, that's how it is.
Okay, so if we're confronted with this type of intimidation, what do you think? How would you suggest that we go forward? Obviously, working together, solidarity. Chiara has emphasized that, so has Sarah and Karine. What should we do going forward? What are our lessons learned? But also, what is the most important message that the four of you would like to leave after this discussion? Chiara, I'll start with you. Thank you so much, Lungo. Chiara, do you want to leave a key message? We have about 8 minutes left.
Yeah, my key message is the one that I already said, that we need to recruit more people and be united and be as widespread across the territory as possible, even when, even where internet doesn't arrive. We need to make a net of people. So if they eliminate me, there's someone else that takes my place and our work is not lost. This is what I want to leave.
Thank you, Karine.
Well, united we will prevail, isn't it? So that's it. I think we have a key advantage. I will talk about me. I believe in law. I'm a lawyer. I believe we can all make a difference. And I think we have our passion, but we also have our reason and we have our emotions. And together we have to create an alternative narrative which reach out to everyone. So, you don't have to make big scale actions either. Talks around you, talks to your friends, talks to your family, reach out in this way, build up a community. We are all part of communities. I think the importance of democracy has never been as important as today. This is not the first time we are fighting for democracy or frontal rights. There is no reason why we won't succeed. Do not believe the hypes. Be aware of the risks. Be aware of the tactics. Is the best way to fight them. So we have the tools.
Knowledge is power. Okay, thank you, Karine. Sarah?
Started with a small question, haven't you? I'm going to say 2 points. One of which is, which may sound contrary, but it's not, which is don't demonize the other side. They are potential allies. They are potential whistleblowers. Talk to them. I've just come back from an amazing conference in Paris where mainly young PhD researchers who are working on AI safety, they're normally working on ways of auditing human rights harms, mitigating human rights harms. They're normally doing it on their own in their bedrooms after they finish their day jobs. I was shown a chart of the amount of investment that's going into AI development and then the amount that the actual companies are putting into AI safety. So go out and talk to tech developers, startups, convert them, make them your allies. We have been talking quite rightly about when you're up against it and often against the corporate interests and the legal departments who may not be your friends. But don't other them. They still went in there for a job. They probably had hopes. You can still reach them. And then the other thing I do think is be the change yourself. You know, when you're about to do that AI generated cat meme, do you really want to use the resource to do that? Or maybe just, you know, pick up the phone and talk to your mum or whoever. I'm not on any social media other than the ones essential for work. So basically WhatsApp, LinkedIn. I've come off all the others. Yes, I miss some parties. I get grumpy about that. And then I ring my friends and go, you know, I'm not on Facebook anymore. Why did you not invite me to the party? So try and do things without these systems. I'm off Amazon. I go shopping with a shopping bag. You know, just try and be the change as well. Reduce, don't believe the hype. Reduce their power in your life and you might reduce their power.
Yeah, small changes or big changes. Absolutely. And finally, Nonga, do you want to add a final word?
Yeah, for me, I believe what we should do mostly in Africa and mostly in Kenya is creating awareness and educating the local citizens, that is, those people in the rural areas. Because those people who draft those manipulative and oppressive bills are the leaders they have elected. So I believe for us, we need to drain the swamp. And by draining the swamp, I mean we should make sure that all those leaders that were elected in the previous election, we have upcoming elections in 2027, that is in August. I believe they should not be elected, not a single one of them, because all of them are mostly are conmen, mostly are thieves. Unfortunately, some even are elected even having scandals, some even having pending law, having cases, corruption cases. So they are corrupt. Some are murderers. Some have cases that have killed people and they still get elected. So I believe for us, we still need to educate everyone and every citizen that if a person has any legal pending case or has ever had any legal pending case, maybe it may be a corruption case, a murder case, scandal, they don't need to be elected because they are not great, they are not good people, they are not good leaders. Unfortunately, they still get elected. So I feel for our generation, we know that, and that's why we are calling them out. But our parents, our grandparents, they are still convinced by being given some few pennies, being given some 200 Kenya shillings, and they end up electing those conmen, those murderers. For me, they are not my leaders, and I believe it's only creating awareness and civic education that will help us liberate our countries and making sure the people we are putting there are people centered. They don't go there for their families to secure a generational wealth. So for me, I believe it's only civic education and making sure we elect the right people.
Okay, I have nothing to add to that. You know, as a human rights lawyer as well, and believing in the rule of law and believing in fundamental rights and freedoms, I believe that you know, our human rights should be respected. However, we don't live in a world where international law is respected, but we do need to maintain that solid base and belief that justice will be done. And of course, I'll build on what you've said. Education, civic education, education for parents, education for those grandparents. Education is a key way to move forward. And that is why, thanks to Angeline, she's organized this conference, because it's to give everybody on a global level a voice to speak. And, you know, we all need to continue communicating, working together and believing that justice can be achieved. I really want to thank you, the four of you, from the bottom of my heart, for an extremely interesting conference. I'm sure that my international human rights masters from Lyon 3 in Lyon have also enjoyed listening to you as well as everybody else online. There's been a lot of valuable information here, valuable advice. Staying together, solidarity, and working together and connecting. And, you know, just to quote all four of you, but to put it into one line, work together, work on solidarity and stay connected, stay informed, and, you know, keep close moving forward, including remaining kind, decent friendships with our enemies, as Sarah said. We need to keep our enemies close. Okay, thank you very, very much. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Have a good day.
Thank you
Thanks
Bye.
for
very
bringing us
much.
together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you and bye. Have a good day.